All right, joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who represents the Illinois district visited by President Biden yesterday. She's also a registered nurse, which would probably give you some insight into some of the things the president would like to do, especially on the families plan, that would really help folks. But how was he received yesterday, and were they buying what he was selling?
Well, we were so honored to welcome President Biden to Crystal Lake, Illinois yesterday. And I think that he got a good idea of how competitive our community is. We have folks across the ideologic spectrum. And the particular community he visited is at the intersection of suburban and rural communities here in Northern Illinois. And so you really got a glimpse of the conversations that we have every day here in the Midwest, which is, where are we going as a country? What is this economic recovery going to look like? And will it benefit me and my family? And I was so heartened to hear him speak about issues in such concrete terms, like the child tax credit, like making sure we have affordable child care for working families, making sure that we can afford community college by offering a couple years of free community college for every resident in this country. I think that these are ideas that a lot of folks support, and we were all very excited to see him in our community yesterday.
Congresswoman Reverend Al Sharpton, you have been, I think, one of the unsung national treasures, being that you've been very young. I think you were like 34 when you went in a district.
I'm 34 now.
You're 34 now, okay. And you went in a district that was not Democratic, and you were able to win and won a tough re-election. And you have gotten 4 pieces of legislation through, including what you've done around this issue of black women and the challenges that they faced in terms of pregnancy and maternity. Will you share with us how you got these bills through, how you've been so productive? That's why the president gave you 3 or 4 shout-outs yesterday, and what your bill will, in effect, do for a community that has been neglected in that area.
Well, yes, sir. So in my first term, I had 4 pieces of legislation signed by President Trump. Just this year, 2 by President Trump, an additional 1 by President Biden. I've been focused on writing bills that get things done for my community. The number one issue that I hear in walking around my district is that health care costs are too high. And there are many ways that we can tackle this problem, but I am so proud that in the American Rescue Plan, we were able to include a provision that expands the tax credits that lower folks' out-of-pocket costs. It says that no American would pay more than 8.5% of their income on insurance premiums through the marketplace. These are silver level plans, good coverage. And since this policy went into effect, over 1.5 million Americans have signed up. We're working to make that permanent in the American Families Plan. But also in the American Families Plan, as you mentioned, Reverend Al, is our Black Maternal Health Momnibus bill, because Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related complications than their white counterparts in this country. These are preventable deaths. We know what to do. We just have to take the action, and President Biden wants to be a partner with us to get that done.
Congresswoman, we've been talking about crime this morning, been talking about what happened over the weekend, not just in Oakland and New York, Philadelphia, but also Chicago. The number of deaths just continue to go up. The acts of violence, gun crimes, I think 100 this past weekend. It's just unthinkable. How do we stem that tide of violence that's been gripping Chicago for a long time? What can we do to support law enforcement? Do we need more police officers on the street as we move to reform policing? What do we do to let police officers know in Chicago that members of Congress, the mayor, others have their back when they're doing their job?
As I share with Reverend Al, I'm 34 years old. I grew up in the school shooting generation. And since I was in high school, we have not seen this country take decisive action to prevent gun violence. And it's something that now not only are millennials grappling with, we have Gen Z and today's students asking us to do something. I was really disappointed to see that vote in the Senate and, the posturing that we've seen among senators around this idea of even universal background checks, which then prevents us get to solutions like the assault weapons ban. And very wildly popular policy solutions that we know would save lives in this country. At the end of the day, we need a Congress that is willing to have the tough conversations around how to save lives, willing to call gun violence by every different form that it expresses itself as unacceptable, whether we're talking about intimate partner gun violence, whether we're talking about school-based violence, whether we're talking about random acts of violence in communities all across this country. This is not just an urban issue. It's not just a people of color issue. This is an issue affecting my suburban and rural community every day. And I hope that this Congress will find the courage to do the right thing to keep all of us safe in our communities.
Well, you're so right on those background checks. We've been talking about it on this show now for a decade. Support, almost 9 out of 10 Americans support expanded background checks and so many other gun laws, gun safety laws. But on the policing side of the ledger, what do we do? We've been reading articles for some time. I know you've seen it too. Police officers leaving the force in droves because they don't feel like public officials have their back. As we rightly pursue police reform, what do we do to let good cops know, to let good police officers know on the streets that we have their back when they kiss their family goodnight and they get in a car and put on the badge at 10 o'clock at night and drive through Chicago or Oakland or New York or your district or my district? What do we do to let them know we have their back?
In my job, I interact with a lot of police officers, whether it's in Washington and these heroes in the U.S. Capitol Police Force who, it was my Republican colleagues who would not step forward to fund these enhancements that they need to be able to have officer retention, to be able to offer these folks benefits, mental health benefits in the face of January 6th. Just 2 days ago, we were all reflecting as a country about where we've come in the last 6 months and the relative inaction that's happened as a result of Republicans digging in, trying to normalize the big lie and say that it was, just outlandish things that they said about January 6th.
But what about in Chicago? What about in Chicago?
Yeah,
what about in Oakland? What about New York? What about across America?
We have to be very clear that our police officers do need support in their jobs. Okay, they need to be able to have the full benefits and pay and all of that stuff. Right? These are challenging jobs that they have. However, we also have to be very clear that it is unacceptable that folks continue to die at the hand of law enforcement in this country. And that is what policing reform is about. I think that we're muddling the issue here. What we have seen in the spike in crime is not because the United States Congress is taking action to reform policing in this country to make it more equitable, to make it fair and safe in all of our communities. What we are seeing is a set of laws in this country that, continue to allow, as Reverend Al said, guns that shouldn't be on the street to be on the street, that continue to allow people to purchase weapons of war and use them freely. And we continue to see that, people are fantasizing about committing acts of violence, and it has been normalized. Violence of any kind is unacceptable.
Yeah, you said we're muddling the issue here. What issue are we muddling? What issue am I muddling?
I believe that the issue of policing reform, these very specific issues like banning chokeholds, holding bad police officers accountable, shining a light on transparency, figuring out a way to make sure that those who are committing crimes while on the job are held responsible, that we are separating that and being really clear and concrete about how that is a separate issue than people dying on the streets every day across this country. Those are completely different things.
Yeah. Well, I certainly support everything that you're talking about there. But people do keep dying on the streets. And we had Commissioner Bratton on earlier today talking about how police officers are leaving in droves because they don't feel like public officials have their back. We've read story after story, I know you have too, of police officers saying the good thing, good police officers saying, I feel like we are under siege all the time. Do you think those police officers are muddling the issue, or do you think that they are unfairly attacking politicians?
Oh, it's not about politicians being attacked. I mean, listen, we get feedback from all corners of our constituency, right? This is about making sure that in doing our jobs and policy making in this country, that we're clear about which problems we're trying to solve. All I'm trying to share with you, Joe, is that solving the problem of a lack of police accountability is not then going to enable more and more spikes in crime in this country. These are different issues. And the issue around policing morale, around their inability to recruit good officers, around this challenge of quite frankly, their image around the country is one that it will take some deep reflection within the leadership of these law enforcement agencies to try to figure out how they can help recast this image of law enforcement. This is not somehow that the United States Congress has been disparaging or, something like that. That is, I reject that from it.
All right. Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, thank you so much.
Thank you.